Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give you another very exciting video. And for today, all right, we're gonna have to get this topic out of the room here though, because I have absolutely no idea why so many people were throwing hissy fits and baby fits and complaining one way, throwing, Xbox consoles in the trash can one moment, and then the next moment they're like, nah, we're just gonna go ahead and start buying PlayStation stuff. Yes, I am talking about the whole fiasco commotion with Xbox potentially going third party, which in the most recent, oh my gosh, it was an Xbox podcast out of all. I didn't even know Xbox even had a podcast. It was a weird way to basically say their updates on this thing. But essentially the big story is, there was a whole fiasco of like some rumor leaks, whatever you want to call them, about potentially Xbox going out and potentially either being third party, putting out some of their exclusives on other platforms, such as like the Nintendo Switch, as well as the PS5 potentially. And that threw everybody out of tandem, especially content creators, website publishers, and stuff like that. It got so bad that unfortunately Xbox had to come out and make a statement earlier, say, hey, we have a business update strategy, but why in the world wasn't in the form of a podcast? I have absolutely no idea on that though, but nonetheless though, they did manage to come out in a statement about a week later, and we managed to get the news, and it's a lot of almost the same kind of plans and stuff as what they're kind of doing already. They're just tweaking a few things though, but we got to sit down and talk about all of this though, because I just thought the whole fiasco was just weird though. So if you hadn't already done so, make sure you're gonna hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. Alrighty, so when they first opened up this podcast, they were talking about, they kind of want to, go through clean house, basically talk about their brand, essentially what does that mean, where you can play your games and stuff like that. They were trying to do some house cleaning stuff, but before they could even do that, they had to obviously address the elephant in the room and kind of address why people were starting to freak out though. So one of the first things they did manage to say is they are still being committed to expanding the community's reach. So we are in the process of bringing 4 Xbox games to other platforms. So these are games in which have been available to Xbox players for at least a year, including hidden gems that deserve to be experienced more widely, and live service games whose communities will benefit from welcoming in even more players. We'll share more details on these titles soon. Now we'll go ahead and break this down here, because I think this is like probably the biggest chunk of change that they managed to bring over here that we just got to go through and analyze here real quick though. So he did say, yeah, it's going to be 4 Xbox games that have been out on their platform for about a year or maybe even more, and they're looking to bring those in. A couple of those games are going to be community games, and another couple is going to be like hidden gem ones. And from everything I've been kind of hearing and some based on some good educated guesses, my guesses would be on that one would be Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, which I have played both those games, and I think both those games will honestly, well, even within the Nintendo Switch ecosystem, let alone the PlayStation ecosystem, along with potentially Pentiment and Grounded. So those will probably be the 4 that's been kind of making the rounds here a little bit though. I can see all 4 of these games potentially coming to other platforms and stuff. The key emphasis that I think that they set up in this one statement are games that have been out for a little over a year. It's not nothing new or anything new underneath the sun, because even with PlayStation, their direct competition, even with them, they've been keeping their games, such as like, for example, Spider-Man or like Miles Morales, like that game was on their system for about a year, and then they've been moving some of those games over to places like on PC. So obviously you can go through and buy it off of the Steam store now. I think Xbox is in that position where they're like, hey, they got these games sitting out on their platforms for so long, and they're like, well, we can either let it rot and die over here, not really get a lot of revenue, because I don't think this is like, these games aren't like evergreens like Nintendo's, like a Super Mario Odyssey, or Smash Brothers, or Mario Kart. Like we still see those in their quarterly financial reports saying that they're still selling like a few million, 3 to 5 million even per quarter. These games are nothing like that, at least on the Xbox side of things though. So instead of them kind of staying within the same marketplace where it's basically hit its cap, why not bring those games over to other platforms where they can make a little bit of extra money? And I've been talking about this a lot in some of my past videos, where literally Xbox as well as PlayStation, their budgets are getting and ballooning so high. I talked about how if you've seen some of the Insomniac leaks, like you saw like the hundreds of millions, like we're talking about almost 300 million plus that they're willing to pump into Spider-Man's franchise for PlayStation. If they're doing the same thing, not even from PlayStation, but also on the Xbox side of things, some things are going to give and some things are going to take. So that's the reason why a lot of these games, have risen from the $60 MSRP up to the $70 MSRP. So yeah, so a lot of these games that they're making and producing and stuff, they got to get this out to as many people as possible. I mean, it's not like Xbox has not already done this before. A couple examples already. Got games such as like Minecraft and stuff that's already out there. You can play it on the Switch, you can play it on PlayStation ecosystem. Like there's games like that Microsoft published. Ori's another good example like that, where they have put in games like that on other different platforms. It's been kind of like a case by case basis though, but it's not like they hadn't ever done this before. And these 4 other games happen to be, the next ones that happen to be making that jump though. Now, I think one of the critical things that they also managed to say is, for some of those Activision Blizzard acquisitions they just recently did, they did say that Diablo 4 will be coming to Game Pass and PC on March the 28th. And they did reiterate that, yes, basically, if you want to play the games first, for example, games such as Indiana Jones, like they said that's not going to be one of the 4 dedicated games. You don't have to worry about that. That's going to first come to Xbox and PC. I think the key thing is to also read between the lines. I think based upon what Phil Spencer actually managed to talk about this thing in the podcast is, once a game has been out on the market for a year, who's to say that they don't happen to put this out on other platforms? They didn't necessarily oppose that. They just said games such as like Starfield and the upcoming Indiana Jones, they're not doing that as of now. And he even said, he's like, hey, I want to kind of keep it clean and cut to y'all. Just because we said this doesn't mean plans can change. He did mention something on the lines of that as well though. So yeah, kind of had to kind of keep all of that in mind as well though. And especially, I think one of the biggest things I think he managed to mention in this podcast is, as of now, they're basically staying status quo outside of the 4 games they're going to try to bring multi-plat. But he did give a major emphasis on saying, the gaming industry as a whole has been taking, a couple of hits here and there. Obviously, there's been layoffs and stuff outside of the Xbox company, even within it. He was talking about how they had to, reshuffle and do some things even within the Xbox company themselves, though. But he said that he wanted to essentially grow Xbox brand. And, and that's just not just console itself, but that includes PC, on the mobile side of things, even their cloud streaming service that they're also doing. That also includes, since they're one of the biggest publishers as well, like games such as Minecraft, how that's published on Nintendo's system as well as Sony's PlayStation. So they're like, hey, wherever we have our games at, we want to grow that audience even bigger, because if they grow the audience a little bit bigger, that can accommodate for these bigger budgets and stuff. That way they're kind of still making the profits and stuff, and they don't run into any issues like that within the, the distant future and whatnot. So they even said in the Xbox podcast that hardware will also continue to be the flagship experience for players and for game developers to launch games on with, robust and innovative multi-year hardware roadmaps, including more console and more controller options for you this holiday. So it's not like, they're gonna abandon the consoles themselves and go third party. So, rest assured you can lay all those thoughts aside and stuff like that. So if you were worried about anything in terms of like just major overall changes, they are doing some minor changes though. I don't think it's going to be anything in the grand scheme of things that will cause anybody to worry though. So looking at all the thoughts that they said in this podcast, as well as like a string of tweets and stuff they managed to say, what's the big focus point at the end of the day? Basically, from everything I gathered up and from what they said themselves, literally we're still going the same direction how Xbox has always been. There's still going to be Game Pass. You're still going to get games on day one. Obviously, the best place to play them, what they are saying is literally on the consoles themselves or PC and stuff. They're not doing any major changes or any shakeups like that. It's just minor stuff right now with 4 titles that we know of coming out in the nearby distant future. They're going to put those to be multi-plat, such as like your Minecrafts and stuff like that. So, you know what? I feel like with this whole entire thing, I don't know why they came out and did it as a podcast format. out of all things though, but literally I felt like this could have been a press statement, a blog update. They could have put this out in a couple of tweets, maybe even, well, just a handful of tweets, like what I've been looking at right now on Twitter. They literally could have done all of that within like string of tweets. It didn't necessarily have to be a podcast format. And from what I heard, this was supposed to happen later in the month. They were going to mention this, but they had to move it up because everybody was going through and complaining and stuff. I think this whole entire thing was literally just damage control, just putting out the fires. Because even though they said only 4 games are going to wind up coming out on different platforms outside of the traditional Xbox ecosystem, I feel like this is just the starting step. Like literally, I think anything that's been out on the Xbox platform for more than a year, if they notice the growth of the sales for a game happens to stall out, but they're going to do something very similar to PlayStation and literally go ahead and just start moving it out to other platforms so that way it can cash them a little bit more revenue. Literally, when you're in the kitchen and you were trying to cook a frog, get some frog legs, you ain't going to throw that frog up in a boiling pot of water. It's just going to jump out on you though. But what you do is literally stick that frog in a pot of cold water and slowly turn the temperature up. That's them telling us only 4 games as of now is going to do this stuff. They're going to warm it up just a little by little, and before we know it, that those only 4 games could wind up turning out to be almost every single Xbox game after it's been out for like a year or something like that. It will be a change, but it's not like a drastic change. But I think they're just trying to condition us to the point right now. So if you're a diehard Xbox fan, just chill out, relax. Nothing's going crazy or awry or anything like that though. Microsoft themselves, the people outside of, the Xbox company division though, they're probably looking at the sales of, the games and stuff like that, because with these ballooning costs and stuff within the industry for all these major costs for these games and stuff, you can't butcher anything. Like I've heard Starfield didn't do as good as what they wanted to. You can't afford to have too many slip-ups like that and expect to still have the company afloat, because no one likes burning money. I mean, if I was walking down the street and dropping $20 bills left and right, like that wouldn't be feasibly sustainable. Even if I was a millionaire, I would hate to drop that money. I'm pretty sure Microsoft probably has that same exact mindset when it comes to their Xbox division though. So overall, don't fret if you're an Xbox fan. All's going to be well at the end of the day though. However, some things are going to start to change slowly but surely until you kind of get adjusted to it. So literally, I think PlayStation and Xbox both are going to wind up having the same kind of strategy of saying, hey, stay within our ecosystem, but for those that aren't, hey, you can also buy this in a different place and give us a little bit of that extra money, because we really need it, because this game was not necessarily cheap though. All right, that was a lot of stuff to get through in terms of this 20-minute podcast episode thing. Oh my gosh, Xbox, like what the heck. All right, y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section down below what all did you think about this business strategy update that happened to be in the podcast. Were you okay with everything they said? Were you kind of reading between the lines, or did you not necessarily agree, or were you kind of disappointed on how this whole entire thing was handled? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that's gonna basically do it for today's video though. So if you really like it, make sure you hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember y'all, to our video I make next. See y'all.